You saw the back and forth last night between Lindor and Giancarlo Stanton on the field out last night out at Citi Field.
What a
so we'll
game.
get into a little baseball. We'll get into a little Jets as well. Kick it off with the Giants, and why not? Because what a putrid performance yesterday afternoon against Vic Fangio, Teddy Bridgewater, and the Denver Broncos on a lot of different levels, a lot of ways that you can go when you look at that Giant game yesterday. I'm going to focus in because the one thing we've talked a lot about this Giants team, more a case of the offense, right? What is Saquon Barkley going to look back like coming back from a torn ACL? Like that's probably fourth on the list. Number one on the list, the offensive line. Number two on the list, Daniel Jones. Number three on the list, Jason Garrett as a play caller. Number four on the list offensively, Saquon Barkley. What does he look like coming off a torn ACL, right? So all of those things, right? You had massive reservations going into against a really good Bronco team with Chubb and with Von Miller on the outside, three solid corners. They drafted Patrick Surtain coming out of Alabama. All of those things said, well, how many points are the Giants going to score? All right, well, I'll get to the offense, and we'll get to the offense here in a little bit. My biggest issue yesterday with that game was how bad the Giants' defense was. They could not, for the life of me, at one point in time, the Denver Broncos ran 50 offensive plays. The Giants ran 19, 20 if you count the kneel down at the end of the first half, right? At one point in time, the Giants got a time of possession. The Broncos were plus 10. They were 3 of 3 on fourth down conversions, including one that went for a touchdown. They were 7 of 15 on third down conversions. You look at it, the one thing you looked at this Giants team coming off last year, and Patrick Graham, we gave the Giants all the credit, Logan Ryan, Blake Martinez, who joined us each and every week, Maggie, during last year, was that, you know what, the Giant defense is going to be legit. Right? If you can count on anything this year, Graham's going to be a future head coach in the National Football League. I still believe that this Giants defense is going to be legit. Yesterday, they got ripped a new one. They really did. I mean, they got out-coached. Give Pat Shurmur, who is a terrible head coach here in New York, terrible head coach with the Cleveland Browns. He is a really, really good offensive coordinator and a play designer because there were guys absolutely running free in that defensive secondary when you look at Bronco wide receivers, whether it be Judy before he got hurt, whether it be Sutton, whether it be Patrick, whether it be Noah Fant. I mean, every single time that Teddy Bridgewater bought himself a little bit of time, there was guys coming back, whether it be dig routes, whether it be crossing patterns, what have you. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if it was not for a drop pass where a guy was completely wide open, the former Penn State wide receiver, and KJ Hamler, that would have been a touchdown.
Yep.
And he was completely wide open. There wasn't a defensive back within 5 yards of him. I mean, it was unbelievable. The breakdowns in that defensive secondary yesterday, a Giant team that couldn't get after Bridgewater when they did. They couldn't get him down to the ground. They could not get the Broncos team off the field, Maggie, at all throughout the course of the day consistently. The Broncos had one drive that went 15 plays. They had another drive that went 16 plays.
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching that game. I said, all right, well, yes, we still have concerns about Jones. You still have the offensive line, and we'll get to the offensive line. We'll get to Judge challenging a play and throwing the red flag out there, and he took blame for it after the game for doing something that you should never do because all scoring plays are reviewed. I mean, that's 101. You don't have to be a head coach. You don't have to know any football now to know exactly what's being reviewed. And every scoring play, by the way, Joe, every scoring play in the National Football League is getting reviewed, and he's throwing the challenge flag out there in the second half, mind you, where it cost you a timeout.
Oh, when you're down by 3 points.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever why you're challenging there at that stage, whether it's a touchdown or not, because they already converted it. I mean, that's it. I mean, whether he stepped out of bounds or not, who cares? They converted it. I mean, that's it. They're going to first down and goal, inside the 2 if he had stepped out of bounds, and he didn't. Maggie, the defense yesterday for the Giants was atrocious, was really, really, really bad. And I was really surprised and stunned because Graham last year, we threw bouquets at his feet. Hell, we had guys coming on saying that they had to rewatch game film 2 or 3 times for themselves, veteran NFL analysts, to figure out exactly how the Giants are shifting with their secondary and the players in the defensive backfield. I mean, they were lost. There were so many broken down coverages yesterday. I don't know if to blame the lack of preseason games. I don't know if it's to blame that the scheme was a little bit too confused. The Giants defense is at the top of my list from yesterday's disappointing performances because I had questions about everything I'd said about offense. I didn't have questions about the defense. The defense yesterday was atrocious.
Moose, they were gassed. They were gassed. Like that Melvin Gordon rips off a 70-yard touchdown run at that point. I think the defense was just completely on their heels. And they were through most of the game. What disappointed me the most, and the defense, while they were bad yesterday, they were missing tackles, all of that. The offense, to me, still is number one, but still, let's talk about the defense for a moment because it was a big part of and a huge issue for the Giants yesterday. I thought that one of the worst series, if you will, that they had was going into the half. Now, we've talked about this before with the Giants, finishing up the first half in the 2-minute and then coming out of halftime. And this was the perfect example of how you just get absolutely caught, and the Giants did, because they were not expecting, I don't think, that Denver was going to go for it on 4th and 2 before halftime, and they go to Sutton for 14 yards. They go to Judy for 14 yards, and then Patrick for 16 yards. They went half the field in 3 plays as the Giants are napping. They score a touchdown to make it 10-7 to go into halftime. They're getting the ball back out of halftime. Thought that there was going to be another fumble and recovery here from the Giants. Gets overturned. The drive continues for Denver.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, that was the right call. The drive continues for Denver. They complete another 4th and 1 to the tight end, who I'll call Albert O, because I don't want to butcher his last name. And now all of a sudden, they're up 17-7, and here come the Giants. And, of course, the Daniel Jones fumble is what ensued on the next possession in the next series. And they were just gassed after that. So,
listen, the 70-yard touchdown, the game was over at that stage, right? I mean, and I agree.
But I'm talking about going into half and coming out of half.
Terrible.
Terrible.
I mean, terrible, right?
They were not ready for
Maggie,
that 4th and 2.
that's supposed to be the backbone of this team, right? That is supposed to be, you think about the strength of the Giants, it's supposed to be the defense. Mm-hmm. Even with all the improvements they made.
I thought they were going to be a top 10 defense this year.
Did they look like a top 10 defense yesterday?
That prediction's not looking great.
They could not. No. And I agree with you. We're both in agreement, right? So I watched that game yesterday, Maggie. They couldn't get the Broncos off the field if their life depended upon it. They really couldn't. And you're right, about 4th and 2, own 49-yard line, and right at midfield, 4th and 2, right? And 49 seconds to go in the first half. And Sutton, 14-yard pitch and catch, easy for the conversion. I mean, what are we doing here if you're the Giants? What is going on? And it just got progressively worse as the game goes along. And you're dead on correct. Listen, they were on the field for nearly 36 minutes. I mean, they are going to show the attrition's not going to be there.
Week one.
Right,
I mean,
week one, the attrition's not going to be there. They barely played throughout the course of the preseason. I get it. They could not get the Broncos off the field. I was surprised at how bad the defense was. Now, the offense could have picked them up, and the offense didn't.
Well, okay, so here's the thing about the offense. I was not expecting that the offense was going to have this huge transformation that we would see in week 1. I understand that Barkley didn't have basically any time in training camp preseason, very limited. Galladay, very limited. You had a lot of guys, Rudolph, very limited. You didn't, Tony, very limited. You didn't have a lot of reps with these guys in training camp in the preseason, so I get they weren't going to look like excellent.
They weren't going to look like the Rams last night.
Right. Now, this is not going to be, a perfect oiled machine here. Right. But could they look a little better? I mean, 13 points, Moose, and that was a garbage time touchdown for Daniel Jones at the end. The fact that the offense looked this bad, I was expecting more. I don't understand why, unless he is still really dealing with that injury, I don't know why you had basically 2 targets for Kenny Galladay, one in the first 3 quarters, and then the second one comes in the 4th quarter, and then he got more garbage time targets. Like, this is your number 1 dude, and he came up with some really nice catches, 2 17-yard receptions. Keep the chains moving here. Galladay, just like them going away, like where was he for half of that game? I didn't understand it. I wasn't expecting so much from Saquon, but he obviously was not, it's going to be a work in progress for him. Shepard really was the one guy who became like the safety blanket there for Daniel Jones, which is great. He can be in the slot. He's exciting to watch, but this offense, like, I thought it was going to look a little better than this. I get they weren't going to be in midseason form, but this is one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL last year, and they didn't really give me much. And the thing is about Jones, I mean, this is why you feel like if you're a Giants fan, like, why can't we have nice things? He is driving and putting together this beautiful drive. I mean, really, that was the best he looked all day. And then he fumbles right when you're getting into the red zone. And the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter if it's not like the volume of turnovers like it has been in the past for Daniel Jones, where he's, turns in 2 interceptions and a fumble, or 2 fumbles and 2 interceptions or whatever. The timeliness of it, and the fact that he fumbled right there, and the fact that he stalled that drive, it was just a gut punch. We talk about Aaron Boone talking about gut punches with the Yankees. That was the gut punch for the Giants because you thought there's no way that he could have this again this season.
Well, you're right. And it's at that stage, it's 17-7. So even if you settle for a field goal, you don't score a touchdown, you're looking at a one-score game at that stage, and you don't get it, right? He fumbles it, recovered by the Denver Broncos. They go down the field, kick a field goal, make it 20-7. You drive down the field, then turn the football over on downs.
Yep.
You look at the third down play call there where he's trying to hit Kyle Rudolph, and the defensive back or the linebacker ran basically the route that Kyle Rudolph was supposed to run as Daniel Jones overthrows him. And yeah, I think it's probably familiarity when you mentioned about Golladay, right? I think you saw he's a little bit more comfortable throwing to Slayton. I think he was a little bit more comfortable throwing to Shepard than he was with Golladay. Maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that Golladay was barely there in practice dealing with the hamstring, Maggie. But I agree with you. You look at the weapon, and Golladay made a catch yesterday afternoon where it was basically, I would say, a 30-70 ball that he came up with.
Oh, it was beautiful.
That shows the talent of Kenny Golladay to be able to fight for the football, fight for his quarterback, and a ball that could have been intercepted, and he turns it into a nice reception for himself. That's the talent of Kenny Golladay. Maybe, Daniel Jones has to build up the trust with him. But yeah, the Giants offense has got to be better because, you go in, you make that a 17-14 game. As bad as that defense is, right? You're right there, right? That's a game that you potentially could go steal. You turn that football over when it's 20-7. Okay, then they're driving. And then you get deep into the end zone, right? And I'm listening to Bob Papa and Carl Banks at the time, right? And when that fourth down, they don't convert on 4th and goal at the 6-yard line. Papa says it brilliantly on the radio side of things as the Giant fans head for the exits.
And did they?
And did they head for the exits?
And I get it.
Because the game was over.
Yeah.
Because at that stage, the game was over, Maggie. And listen, we've gone here 15, 16 minutes, and we have not yet to address the offensive line. And honestly, the offensive line, you got to be able to run the football just a little. Like, they attempted 20 rushes. They had 60 yards as a team. Every carry seemed like the longest rush was a Daniel Jones scramble for 8 yards. The entire game. Every time they handed off to Booker, every time they handed off to Saquon Barkley, it was 2 or 3 yards. I mean, that's all they were getting. And I get there. I mean, Nate Solder got embarrassed on one play by Von Miller. Yeah. And that's going to happen. Miller's like an all-time great pass rusher.
Yeah, but they lucked out that Chubb didn't play yesterday because of an ankle.
No, I get it. But you look at that scenario yesterday. You look at a case where you go into that game and you've got Von Miller on the outside. You're preparing that you're going to have Chubb. You don't have Chubb. But you look at that Bronco defensive line. They did an amazing job. Like, the one thing I thought was the Giants' offensive line at least could run block. It could open up a hole here or there.
No.
Banks was talking about it on the broadcast yesterday. And you know what? They couldn't. They were downright terrible yesterday in their run scheme.
Yeah, they could not get anything going on the ground, which obviously, the trickle effect there is, then you become kind of predictable. And, Daniel Jones still has the ability to move around. I thought Thomas, though, if we're going to try to find some bright spots here, maybe some silver linings, Andrew Thomas did not have a terrible game yesterday. So it was a little bit more on the right side of things where Solder, Parrott, were kind of in and out. He was not, the fact that Andrew Thomas was not terrible, I guess you'll take that, Giants fans. But I thought the run game was going to be something that was going to come along a lot slower because, listen, Barkley didn't have that home run. His longest rush yesterday was, 5 yards? I mean, at least he was getting into the pile a little bit. They were pushing him, for a crucial 3-yard pickup, I think, at one point. They kept the chains moving. But, yeah, the offensive line is still on notice. And it's obviously going to be tough. The Broncos defense was very good, but the fact they lucked out and didn't have one of their Pro Bowl pass rushers there, and they still were able to look this stout against them. I mean, Von Miller looked excellent yesterday.
Oh, he's great. He's an all-time great.
I think that even beyond, the defense was disappointing.
The
offense was disappointing. I thought what was also very disappointing, I thought Joe Judge was disappointing yesterday. I thought that was an undisciplined move that he made with that challenge. I mean, really, you're trying to get the attention of the official, and that getting the attention of the official so you could kvetch and you could be heard or get your feedback or whatever he was talking about yesterday, to whine to the official because you're not overturning the call. The call's been made and it's been reviewed. The call stands, Joe. So the fact that you wanted to whine and you put that above a timeout in a one-score game where you're home in your home opener, where this team has lost their opening game in the last 5 years, the fact that you would burn a timeout there, and listen, he took it on himself. He said it's my fault. But if this was Pat Shurmur, we'd be killing him. If it was any other Giants coach, Joe Judge has done a lot of good things for this team, no doubt about it. That was a bad moment for him yesterday. He's got to be the one who, you're going to have emotions. You're a human being, but you're the one who has to be able to put that aside for the greater good of the strategy and to help your team. You can't be that guy.
Yeah, no doubt.
I was shocked. I was disappointed. You had 3 other unnecessary roughness calls or personal foul calls. Sloppy.
Yeah, it was bad by Judge. It didn't cost them a game, but it was a bad look.
It could have.
Yeah, in the end,
yes, because they were getting blown out.
In the end, it was not. It didn't come in the. It wasn't a play where it came in like the Giants. The Giants got outplayed. They got. You want to be critical of the Giants staff? They got outcoached as well.
They did,
and we'll get more into that too. I'll give you an example. When you look at Garrett as a play caller, and when you look at Pat Shurmur as a play caller between the Giants and the Broncos yesterday. Whoa. What a performance. PU by the Giants yesterday afternoon out at...
Would you call it a Pepe Le Pew performance? God, yeah, like Keith Hernandez?
No doubt. Great line by Keith about the Yankees. Unbelievable. And he was not wrong. And you know what? You want to describe the Giants' performance yesterday like that? You have every right. They were downright bad.
Wait, Pete, can I ask you a small favor? At some point before the end of the show today, can we isolate the Gary Ron giggle for our audience?
Oh, Gary adores it. When he
the
says
Gary
that line,
giggle.
Yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, it is. Moose and Maggie with you. 877-337-6666.